Hello, my cycle breakers. Let's start with this uncomfortable truth that can be unsettling at the beginning, but then it can become liberating. And the truth is, you were not born with imposter syndrome. You were not born afraid to be seen or to be visible. You were not born to be scared of taking up space or, speaking up. These are the things that you would have learned along the way. These are the patterns that you would have taken on because you want to stay connected. If you think about it, right? As children, we would trade anything to keep our connection because our survival literally just depends on being connected to a parent or a caregiver. So it's very important for us. As I said, we would trade anything, even parts of ourselves or who we are and our authentic selves. Because it makes sense, because we want to kind of stay connected, we want to live, and we want to be in survival. So we then start building a version of ourselves that will help us navigate the world. Because we would learn very early on, and if you pay attention, children are actually very, very clever. They learn very early on what's accepted, what's not, what will get them, to what they want, or how, or whether or not they're going to get told off. They pick that up very quickly. And there's a reason for that. It's because we need to know, and we're constantly trying to assess how we can stay connected, how we can be safe, because literally our survival depends on that. So today, and this conversation that I want to have with you is about the version that you had to become in order to navigate the world. And the part of you, or the version of you that you had to bury along the way in order to, again, navigate the world, in order to feel safety. And what I want to be talking to you about is something that I call identity split. So this is the distance, or the disconnect, if you like, between who you actually are, your authentic self, and who you had to be in order to survive. And really thinking about what identity today is running the show, and is it working for you or not? So this is important, because if you're operating from the survival identity, then nothing is going to work, because your survival literally depends on it, right? Or so you understand. Because when we enter adult life, if we are not reevaluated these identities, these defenses, then we think, oh, this is just who we are, right? And I hear that a lot. Oh, who I am is, I'm a shy person, or who I am is, I'm an introvert or an extrovert. And I always say, well, how do you know if you haven't assessed your patterns and your programming? And so it's important to recognize that at some point you had given yourself a message. When I say yourself, I mean your younger self, right? But if you haven't evaluated these messages, you wouldn't know the difference. You think that it's applicable to your adult life as well. So the message would have been is that this part is safe, this part is dangerous, right? And this part is going to get me the connection that I want, and this part is going to get me mocked or rejected, or whatever it might have been. So you start to split. And what happens is that you amplify parts of you that you felt were rewarded. And by reward, I mean the parts that were accepted, people kind of rewarded you for that. Your parents might have said, oh, she's such a quiet girl, and you saw it as something that was positive, whatever it might be, right? So you amplify the parts that were rewarded, and then you bury the parts that were rejected, right? So, and that might have worked for you, because that might have made you feel safe, and it's actually a brilliance. I always say this is not a weakness. This is it's amazing capacity or ability that we have to navigate difficult situations, even as a young child. But as you can imagine, this becomes, over time, this identity can become problematic. It can become like a cage. Because if you want to have success, you need to become visible. You need to have a voice. You need to be able to be creative and then present that creativity to the world with more confidence. And if your survival identity is, it's dangerous to be visible, or, oh no, I cannot take up space because something bad's going to happen, then you're not going to be able to express yourself and expand in a way that you want. So this becomes problematic. This has nothing to do with you kind of having to work harder, or you need to have more discipline. I mean, this is the thing that I see a lot with people, especially high achievers, especially people that really want to succeed in life and they have goals. So some of these survival identities that I see with some people that I work with is, one of the good ones is actually a very common one, is a performer. So it's the identity that, they're always productive. They're always like, they're always doing everything great, and they're always producing something, right? So they cannot just rest, right? So you can see how that could lead to burnout when we're thinking about the business world, right? Or your career. And the other identity, the false identity or the survival identity, is a caretaker. So this is the person that has to take care of everybody, because at some point when she was small, she was rewarded for, taking care of the siblings or even parents for that matter, right? But now that becomes problematic, because it means that, especially if you want to, step into leadership, you're going to, you in this identity, you're going to want to avoid conflicts. You don't know how to set boundaries. Again, you can see how that can become problematic. And then we've got my personal favorite, because I think for a long time I identified with that identity, and that's a lone wolf, right? I actually said those words. So because I thought, oh, that's a ability, and it is an ability. It's a survival ability. It's not an expansion ability. So lone wolf is the one that doesn't ask for help. She or he, they want to prove that they can do everything, and they are highly independent. And again, it becomes problematic when you want to expand your business, when there are circumstances where you need to learn to ask for help. Otherwise, you will stay stuck. So, I mean, these are a few examples. Actually, one more I will add is the high achiever. And I know I say that a lot, when I refer to, high achievers and, difficulties or trauma response or whatever. But high achievers are, I find a lot of the times, this is an identity, this is a survival identity, where unless they are doing something amazing or they're winning, they feel like a fraud. So again, wanting to achieve bigger things is not a problem by itself, but when it becomes your survival identity, it is problematic, because then you never really stop to enjoy or celebrate your wins, even if they're small, even whatever, if they're big or small, it doesn't matter. But we also want to have compassion for these survival identities, because they helped us avoid criticism, and they helped us avoid rejection. They helped us feel a sense of control, especially as children. That's important. If you don't have a sense of control, you become really distressed. And it definitely helped us stay connected to others. So they actually worked for us. But now they're not going to work for us if you want to kind of go to the next stage. Because in that process of helping us avoid all this like criticism and rejection and everything else, what they also taught us is how to mute our voice. how to overfunction, how to become invisible or abandon ourselves. So that's just not going to work when we are thinking about, because there is a cost to this split. It worked, there was a time where it worked and it worked for us. The cost now may very well be that what's the very thing that's stopping you from getting all the things that you want and you deserve. You may become unclear in your messaging because one day you feel kind of like, oh, I need to speak about my ideas. The next day you feel, these false, survival identities kick in and they will pull you back. So then you become unclear in your messaging. You're not consistent. People are not able to rely on you in that way. Or you become anxious when you have to become visible. You make yourself small. You know the rest. It comes up in different forms. So this is why this topic of split identity is important. And what I want you to think about and explore is I want you to think about different kind of parts of you, these different identities, survival identities that you had to make your own in order to connect, survive, whatever it was. This part is important because unless you identify that, it's going to be very difficult for you to change it. And bear in mind that we don't want to erase that survival self, or we don't want to kind of bury that part or dismiss it. We just want to be able to integrate that with the other part that's your authentic self. And we don't want to shame that part because the survival identity needs to step back. She cannot be at the, sitting at the driver's seat because, it's not going to drive you to your destination. Simple as that. So it's important to give these parts, these survival identities, a lot of love, a lot of compassion, because they did get you this far. So again, it's the acknowledgement that she got you here and she got you to this, and she kept you safe. But that's why we're not erasing it, but we are just letting it sit on the side so that the other part of us, the version of us that wants to create, can take over a little bit more. So it might be worth thinking about what part of you, or what part of you is actually operating in your business, in your professional life, or actually where in your business, what part in your business or at your work are you still being led by the self that's trying to protect you? These are the things that you need to kind of reflect on. And the more you can kind of integrate these parts, the safer you're going to feel, and the more regulated your nervous system is going to be, stepping into expansion. So I want to close this by saying that you don't need to get rid of the old you. There is no old you or a new you. These are different parts of you and we need to integrate these parts. And you don't need to create a whole new identity for yourself. The idea is not to create a new identity. The idea is not to become somebody new. The idea is to understand and learn these different parts so we can integrate them and we can kind of take back and the parts of you that you had to dismiss. The brave part, the wisdom, the part that the dreamer, especially as children, there is such innocence and such, we have this sense of magic. All these parts, we had to bury them in order to survive. Now we want to bring it back. We want to integrate these parts, and we want to map out your survival identities so that we can kind of work with these parts too. I hope that you find this helpful, and I hope that you will spend some time reflecting on these different parts, reflecting on your survival identity and your authentic